This retreat, just as any satsang, but especially when we are together for a long time, the purpose of this is to immerse in the recognition of truth and share it with others as well. So, our presence, everyone's presence, is vital to the whole retreat, because whatever question we may have, whatever comment we may have, whatever observation we have, is very helpful to others as well. So, when we are here together, we are exploring the nature of truth together, and whatever comes up, the question we might have might be of great help to someone who is simply listening silently, or a comment that comes up may resonate and bring up a different question. So, the important thing is to be very interactive and to have a lot of questions and answers, because when we have a lot of discussion along with silent sitting, then it brings out various dimensions of how we are caught in the ego and how to be free of it. The pointer is very simple, and yet it is not very easy. This is the conundrum of truth itself. The pointer is that which is what we call as the pure beingness, the essence that pervades the whole universe, that essence that pervades every cell of our body, is the same essence everywhere, and that is divine. Divinity is not to be looked for by looking up to the sky, but by looking around us, within us, everywhere, in and out. The moment we think of divinity as something that's up in the sky or somewhere out there in time or in space, we create a false division between ourself and this apparent divinity that is hidden from us. And then there are many practices one engages in, and those practices themselves become divisive. And this is the nature of many traditional religions that are going about. But the direct sage points out that what you're looking for is already here and now. The divine is not something to be found anywhere else but here. The stillness of being that is shining forth and that is expressing itself uniquely in infinite ways is the divine. And this divine energy surrounds us in all ways, from the animate to the inanimate, from people to places, situations, activities. Everything is surrounded by the same energy. That's why, as we well know, the famous Vishnu Sahasranamam begins by saying Vishwam Vishnu. The Vishwam, the world, is Vishnu. The divine is not to be found anywhere else but here and now, is what the very first name of Vishnu Sahasranama also points to. So when we recognize that Vishwam is Vishnu, that is, the universe is divine and it is infinite in nature, then what is very clear is that there is no one who can separate from that and experience it. One of the great pitfalls or traps of spiritual practice is looking for experiences. We want a certain experience, and that experience hunting becomes the goal of spiritual practice. Normally, we are engaged in experience hunting anyway. Everyone is engaged in hunting for experience. And that is why it is traditionally also defined as fourfold experiences. Experience of wealth, and wealth includes many things, of course, not just financial, but people and fame and all of it. Experience of pleasure, experience of feeling good about oneself, what is called as sometimes the do-gooders high, that is just by dividing ourselves and engaging in various causes and getting some experience out of it. But then we bring the same attitude of experience hunting to God realization as well, or to self realization. And we think it is an experience. And that fallacy has to be first seen through very clearly, that the infinite cannot be experienced by the finite, because the finite is already part of the infinite. So, just as a wave cannot experience the ocean, similarly, one cannot experience. The moment we are talking of experience, it's already division. It already means we are caught in the ego, and the ego alone wants to experience something, and this experience, if there is some kind of experience, then it's registered. But one has to be very clear that any experience is limited. The moment we recognize an experience, that experience is only a product of knowledge, which is memory, which is stored, and then we get attached to it. And then we are looking for the same experience or a similar experience. And this experience hunting is something that becomes a trap that sometimes keeps people in a particular practice or in a particular path for many years. Many yogic paths, for example, they give certain highs, and those experiences become the focus of spiritual practice. But the simple pointer is all experiences come and go. So when we recognize that all experiences are only transient, then there is no looking for experience here, but just recognizing the truth of what is here and now. And the truth of what is here and now cannot be simply knowledge. One cannot simply know it as we know facts, we know theories. Because when we acquire knowledge, knowledge again is limited, just as experience is limited, knowledge is also limited. So we are not here to either gather experience or acquire knowledge, but to directly be, by being free of the false sense of the one seeking experience or knowledge, recognize the truth of what is. So the pointer is therefore very simple, because what is here and now is divine. But the reason it is not easy is because we want something very complex and complicated. We want some mystical experience. We want some very abstract knowledge. We want some philosophy that sounds very, very arcane. All of this is only for the mind which likes complexity and which thinks it cannot be this simple. But the truth is so simple because it is here and now. Whatever is here and now is divine. And that recognition is only seen in our relationships, how we relate to people. It is not something we understand as a theory that everything is divine here and now, but it is in relating to people, relating to things, relating to situations that we can see where we are caught. So the problem is not understanding truth or experiencing truth, but in recognizing where we are actually caught and thereby not seeing the truth. So, in any relationship, for instance, when we are relating to people or when something happens, whether it is good or bad, positive or negative, when we see an object which looks very appealing, all of these are places where the me comes up and it wants to make it a movement for its own pleasure. So, the default conditioning that almost everyone has is to look at every relation, every interaction, every object from the perspective of what's in it for me. These four words, what's in it for me, is the undercurrent of the subconscious impulse that drives all actions, that drives all relations, that drives every interaction. And that's where we lose sight of this truth. So it's not about understanding or having a memory that everything is divine, because that understanding or philosophizing is not going to help us clear the ground where we are stuck. So it is in psychological image making that we are caught, which is hiding the truth of the divine that's all pervading. So the way we normally interact with everyone is we have an image of ourselves, and this image that we have built over time becomes the most important factor in dealing with others. And this very image then becomes the central factor that we are constantly going from. There is a center from which we are interacting with people, and that center gives us direction, gives us motive, and it is the one that is constantly being held dear. We either want to fortify it or we are very afraid that it will be offended, it will be insulted. So we are always caught in the center, which is the image that we have built. So the ego, as we call it, is not some abstract entity, but it is manifesting as the image that we have in every interaction. And in each interaction, we may even notice that the image is very different. We may have a particular image in a relationship at house, a different image in a relationship at work, in a different image when we are watching the news, in a different image when we are walking out in the street. All of these images, which are rooted in identities of various kinds, are what traps us and makes us caught in this division, the divisive movement of me. So the I thought, which is the core ego, expresses itself as me in all these various ways. So every time we have any relation, any interaction, if we are not alert, then unconsciously this movement of the me takes over. And when it takes over, then it immediately wants to make every movement something to gratify itself, something to boost itself, and so on. And when we come to spiritual ground, let's say, when we are even going into a spiritual text, there also we have the same identity that comes forth, and the identity that we have due to our past conditioning belonging to a particular lineage or religion or whatever it might be, again acts as the same divisive factor where we are then evaluating what is right, what is wrong, what is in accordance with the tradition, what is not in accordance, and we thereby divide everything in that way, even in the very realm of recognizing the falsity of it. So, even when we come to spiritual practice, then we are caught in this, and then soon we make an image of the Guru and we have an image of our own self, and then it becomes a very easy, lazy way to say the Guru will take care and just leave it to everything, and then we go about in our unconscious way. So, the whole pointer of the true Guru is that you are already what you are looking for, but you have to remain alert to not get caught in it, caught in the false movement of me. So, when we recognize this, that the Guru is within and not an image in the mind that we have projected, and then we create various activities around it, which are no different from activities we have when it comes to other realms of life. But if we look at it very carefully, then this division goes away completely, first of all. There is no such thing as a separate spiritual life and a material life, because all life is divine. And when we recognize that all life is divine, then this tendency to just make some theory or some image into a crutch for ourselves in the spiritual realm, while going about in the material realm in our old ways, and the dichotomy of that, the division that is there, all of this is very clear to us when we are very honest to ourselves. This is why once very famously Ramana Maharishi said, when asked by someone who said, please tell me the one small thing that I can follow. This was a person who was not very learned. He didn't know all the theories, he didn't know all the philosophies. And he said, please tell me something that I can live by. And he very beautifully, simply said, be true to yourself. Unakku unmayaga iru, he said. Being true to ourselves is the greatest tapas. It is the greatest austerity, is to being true to ourselves. We can go about putting a face to anyone, anywhere, but we know when we are not true to ourselves. And many times we try to hide it through various stories we tell ourselves, and thereby we look for some false security and comfort and so on. But if we are very honest and brutally true to ourselves, then we will see that the purpose of this teaching is to live free here and now, and not to get caught in divisions and become lazy and then just say that I have surrendered, when there is no true surrender at all, because true surrender is to recognize the divinity that is all pervading and accepting everything as is. So, when we recognize this truth, then the true Guru awakens within us and guides our actions. And the most beautiful way in which one can transcend this division of what's in it for me, which is always guiding our actions, which is always making us caught in the ego and changing every moment, every relation to a movement of the false self. To be out of it is simply through a inner shift that moves away from seeking something for the me to offering oneself as service to others. This is the very foundation of bhakti. What is called as bhakti or devotion is again not to create a division between oneself and God and then create an image of God and then call it my God and your God. And all the fights we see in the world are all because of false understanding of the word devotion or bhakti. But the true purpose, the true meaning, the true essence of bhakti, which is devotion, is love that is unconditional. That unconditional love can come about only through an attitude of serving everyone, everything, every moment. When we move in this way inwardly, then there is a recognition that the expression of love through service purifies the heart. Then that recognition and the action that comes forth of it is the most direct way to be free of the false self. So, if there is one thing that we can take away as the most actionable, practical way of living that makes all of this understanding, all of this come real each moment, is to live a life of unconditional love and service. When we are interacting with anyone, anything, anywhere, if we look at it from the perspective inwardly of how can I make this better? How can I serve this person? How can I offer my attention? Then one can ask, who is this I? But we will notice that that I is only the expression of the divine energy of that moment. It does not build a story of the me. It does not go into the past or project the future. If one offers oneself completely to this moment, make oneself fully available, and offer one's attention, love, and service to this moment in every relationship, in every interaction, then that very act purifies the heart and removes the I. So there is an expression again in Pancharatnam, which is a very beautiful expression of Sri Ramana. He says, Amala Mati. The whole pointer of self-inquiry, he says, is what is necessary is pure mind. Amala Dhya in Sanskrit. Amala Dhi means mind. Amala means without any corruption. The corruption is again, simply put, the notion of what's in it for me. Whenever we interact, as long as we are rooted in what's in it for me, there is corruption. That is why in this world we see corruption at all levels. All politics is corrupt, all economics is corrupt, all religions are corrupt, all relationships are corrupt, because everything is about what's in it for me. And we build identities based on that, and then we create the game of us versus them. We feel good if something happens for us, whatever the definition of us is. We feel bad if whatever happens which is not good to the definition of us. This is the way in which all conflicts are happening. That's why the smallest conflict between two people, the greatest conflict between two nations, are all happening due to only one reason. There are many conflicts, but there is not many reasons. There is only one reason, which is the me, the ego. So the freedom that comes from me is through an attitude of pure love and service. So when we interact with anyone, anywhere, starting with satsang, when we are talking to people, when we are offering our comments, everything we do, when we recognize that whatever we do is going to be of great service to people around us. And the first way to serve, one can say, what does it mean to serve? Because it doesn't mean simply being a doormat, simply being walked over by others. There are many wrong notions of what it is to serve others. True service is only an expression of total attention and love. The first service we can offer others, which starts with even right now in satsang and it goes everywhere, is to listen without any judgment. When we listen to people fully, totally, the very listening is the greatest service. Many times people do not get the gift of even being listened to. Normally, when we are talking, we are only waiting to say what we have to say. And we are not actually listening, not just the words, but the gestures and the underlying motivations, whatever the person is caught in, because everyone is caught in the same false sense of me. But the moment we give attention to that completely, then the very attention frees us of the me. This is the most mystical, or one can say magical thing about attention. Total attention. In fact, someone said recently that the entire teaching of Ramana Maharishi can be brought to one word, means that word is attention. And the same is true of any great sage. Because without attention, everything will be simply theory, and then we are constantly postponing and we are thinking it will happen someday. If it is not happening now, it's not going to happen ever, because every moment is only now. So if our attention is fully here and now, that very attention has the effect of purifying the heart, freeing the sense of me, and making this moment full and complete. We don't have to then go anywhere. We don't have to make this as a means to attain something new, because this moment is complete if our attention is fully here and now. So, the most direct way to serve someone is to give total attention, and it's not just with people, it's with objects. When we handle something, when we handle even a furniture, when we handle a vehicle, when we handle, if we are very attentive, we are very gentle, we are very caring, and we are very graceful with it. But if we are not attentive, we just make it a means to an end, then only then all kinds of accidents happen. We spill things, let's say, we even with objects. There is, when there is no grace in our movements, because we are in inattention, then the inattention causes various things to happen, and then we end up more time fixing what has happened. But when we are in full attention to littlest of things and the biggest of things, then the very attention is the greatest service, because when we are in total attention, we are very sensitive. We are sensitive to the touch of something, to the feel of something. When we are eating food, we are very sensitive to the taste of it. So that is why it is said even food has to be honored. That's the whole principle of prasadam. We sit and give ourselves at least half an hour, not have any devices around us, and just honor the food, taking every morsel with total attention. So that is to serve and honor the body as well. So we can serve our own body by not putting any junk food in, by eating very consciously, alertly, by engaging in movements very carefully. We can serve objects, as we said, by attention, by being very careful and graceful. And we can serve people, of course, through simply the act of attention, because the very attention will bring out the right action which will serve them. It can be a smile, it can be a right response, it can be an action, whatever it is, that very attention with listening without judgment brings forth the right attitude of service. And we'll notice that when we are engaged in this way, that way of interacting with people, with things, with situations will naturally remove the grip of me. We don't have to then make any special effort. We don't have to tell ourselves that I have to now go somewhere and sit for hours together in silence. All that is not necessary at all if we see every moment as an expression of the divine and not see it as a theory but actually do it through our attention. It is an alert attention that the reality of that statement is manifest. When we look at even a blade of grass and we look at it as, we cannot tell ourselves that it's an expression of the divine as a theory, but if we look at it with just the beauty of what it is, the miracle of what it is appearing as through attention, then we look at it in a very new way. So every little thing, when we walk around in a park or when we are even walking, driving in traffic, it doesn't matter what the situation is, wherever we are, if we are in alert attention each moment, that alert attention brings forth sensitivity, care, compassion, and all of it. And that very attention, which is love, is divine. That is why the every great sage has said it. There is an old expression in Tamil too. It says Anbe Shivam. Love is God. The same expression is there in many other languages too, because it is it is in total unconditional love that the divine is felt. And that is through alert attention. When we are inattentive, then there is no presence of divine. It's hidden. Divine is always here and now, of course, but just as the sun is covered by clouds, similarly, the clouds of our ego covers the sun of the presence. So when attention is there, the clouds are removed and the presence shines forth. Then in that very attention, we will be free of the false sense of me. And when the false sense of me is not there in each interaction, in each moment, then what shines forth is an inexpressible sense of peace and joy. We don't have to look for it. We don't have to search for it as an experience, but there will be just a natural expression of bliss when we are very attentive, when there is no registering of any activity, when our full attention is given to an activity and it's finished. We don't look back and think about it. We don't look back and either be self-critical or critical of others, because when we have completed every activity with total attention, then that total attention given to each activity brings forth a sense of peace naturally. So that is the way to be free of the me and the heart is pure. This is what Bhagavatam says repeatedly, that by seeing everything as divine and serving everyone and everything as divine, one sees the divine here and now. There are many stories in Bhagavatam which bring forth this reality. There is the most famous story of the king Ambarish, who lives his life in this way, where he says every sense he is engaging in, he is engaging it only to serve others. And it is said that in this story, that because Ambarish is so divinely seeing Bhagavan in every interaction, Bhagavan himself is said to be his servant. So this is symbolically giving the truth that the whole of universe is being an expression of the divine when one is in tune with it, and being in tune with it and being therefore in total attention and love makes the whole universe act in unison, and there is no division there. And that is the symbolism of that story. So when we can go from this retreat, for instance, if we can take this one thing, that we can make every interaction divine without looking for some attainment of an experience or a understanding or a philosophy or anything, but just making every interaction sublime through our attention. That is the simplest and the most transformative expression that brings forth a change in our lives. Any question comes or any comment comes, any practical consideration comes, all of this can be of great help, because when everyone has unique situations in lives and different things going on, no, and that's the beauty of life, is that each person is unique, each situation is unique. So when we see it in our situation, we may have a particular problem with health, or we may have a particular problem at work, or we may have a particularly challenging relationship, or whatever it might be, that these are all the places where the rubber meets the road, as it's said. So when we speak about what is the way in which attention is taken away, what are the unconscious patterns that come in, then that's the, by recognizing it, we can be free of it. And if there is anything that we can share which is very practical, or ways, places, for instance, where our attention is taken away, what are the triggers that removes it, all of this can be of help to others as well, because while each situation is unique, what happens to one has great impact on others as well, and the root cause is the same, as already pointed out. So if we share what is going on and what makes us abide in attention and what removes us and takes us into inattention, those are all things which are very helpful to share. Because again, the important thing to recognize is that we think of truth as some ultimate reality that is some kind of a special experience that has to descend from sky. But the beauty is, it is right here, right now, but just hidden in plain sight. That is the mystery of it. So what's hidden in plain sight, to see it, is the whole mystery of self-realization. There are so many times, so many places where, For instance, Ramana Maharishi says, you are already where you are. He would give the example of you are already in Ramanashram and you're looking for how to get to Ramanashram. That's the way in which we function. We are already where we are and we are asking, how do I get here? The only answer is you have to open your eyes, because if the eyes are closed, then we don't know where we are and we are looking for a place where we already are. And to open the eyes is attention, the inner eye. If the inner eye is closed, then there is inattention. We are dreaming and we are looking for some idea, some projection of whatever we call it, self realization or God realization, which eludes us. But when the ground of the mind is clear and the mind is muddled through getting caught in psychological and emotional and all these issues. So when the ground is very clear through attention, then that very amala mati, the very pure mind, reflects the divine very effortlessly. Just as a mirror which is dirty doesn't reflect light, and we don't have to look for light, we just have to make the mirror clean. The light is already here. So that is the whole essence of self inquiry as well. It is to negate the false me, not to look for the true I, because the false me, when it's negated, what remains is the true being. And that negation of the false me is through attention.
Yeah, I
Please go ahead.
wanted to ask, just to clarify, so to bring it into the experience of normal life, uh, and to understand what attention is, um, I wanted to give an example. I've seen this a few times, that interactions between people, they seem to follow patterns. Even uh, when you take the interaction out of context, as in, for example, if two people go shopping on the same day every week, um, I've seen that the two people will interact very, very similarly from week to week. Even though they might have had an argument in the middle of the week, they will still act the same way on the occasion of going shopping, for example. So what I'm trying to say is that we live the cues of everyday living seem to make our minds act in certain ways. So we're living in a kind of I don't know, like
Program.
a yeah, a program. Yeah, yeah. We're living in a program, and we reiterate the program when we go into that situation. We see the same thing, then we see the look on the face of the other person, and it starts the program off. We're not giving our attention. What we're doing is we're being in that situation and remembering what it was like in the past and redoing it again. So I mean, I saw it with my daughter and my wife. They used to have arguments at the same time of the week, um, and act in the same way. So sometimes I think we act robotically, and I think that's. I wanted to know, is that the attention that you were talking about? If we're not looking at each moment individually and giving it our attention, we're not really living in reality.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great point, right? That's a great example, because sometimes the triggers we have, we just get into patterns because of those triggers, and those patterns guide our lives, and we don't so that can actually happen anywhere, even in, even in satsang. We can come to satsang and then a particular pattern can take over, and then we want to go by that pattern, we are comfortable with that pattern, and then that is something, and then we go into work and there is a different pattern. All these patterns are the stored unconscious movements of the me, which get activated, and then it goes back into sleep. Then the next pattern comes up. So, this is unfortunately how most of us live most of the time. So, that's exactly right. This is where attention matters, is when we are very attentive, then that pattern is broken. We can actually live out of attention and see what's going on inwardly first, right? So when we look at something, take something as even very simple, even letting people aside, let's take even something very simple like an object we see. If we are unconscious, then we just want to use that object for some gratification of some kind, or we don't even pay attention to it. So if we are walking by a garden, even let's say, and there is a beautiful flower, we either ignore the flower because we are caught in our thoughts, or we look at the flower and see how I can either grab it or just project how I can own it and how I can take it away and so on. But instead, if we just look at the flower and look at the miracle of the flower without wanting to possess it, own it, or anything, then there is that act of attention is service. Right? We don't engage with even nature that way, let alone people. People are part of nature too, but nature that is not animate, let's say, we don't engage with it. We just immediately want to use it for something. We want to take a flower and then we want to make a garland out of it or do whatever we want to do with it, but just not see the beauty of the flower as is and leave it as is. And the same attitude is what we have with people as well, of course. And there is conflict because a flower wouldn't resist. It's not animate, but when it comes to people, the other person also wants to do the same thing. They want to look for what's in it for me, for them, and we do the same, and there is conflict. So the way we deal with objects or with people is all rooted in the same sense of me, and we cannot tell ourselves that I'll be attentive in certain situations and sleepwalk in others. That kind of division is never going to work. So that's why attention has to be every moment. When there is holistic attention each moment, then we are living in reality, as you put it well. We are not just caught in our head. We are not just running a program. We are living in reality. Then the living in reality is free of the me. There is only the living in reality. There is nobody living in reality. The very living in reality is the expression of stillness within. The stillness is felt in the heart when one is living in reality through attention. So that's why it's not something, it's a very subtle and easily missed thing. We want to grab, we want to go to stillness. We want to realize stillness, and that very movement is the conundrum. The desire to realize stillness is what is the obstacle to realizing stillness. So when we recognize that the very seeking is the obstacle, then the seeking drops and attention flowers. So attention to each moment and understanding the false me and thereby dropping it is the only tapas, the only austerity, the only penance, and that is the essence of self inquiry. To understand who is caught in this pattern, who is running a program, who is looking at this person or this object for their own gratification. We look at it very carefully. We don't even have to verbalize the question, but that's just the question to recognize that it's the me conditioned by the past which is making the present moment into a means for gratifying itself. And when that recognition is there, then the me is dropped. And if one gives attention fully to the other person or object, then the me is dropped effortlessly, because then the central, we don't even have to then think about being free of the me, because the very attention and the love it brings about dissolves the me.
Hi. I had a question. I've always been wondering this for some time. Every now and then we come across people, whether it be strangers or loved ones or friends, who are suffering physically or mentally. How do you pay attention in the situation? Because simply saying that this is ordained, that's why you're suffering, seems a little heartless, right? So, how do you go about that? Even when you yourself fall sick, sometimes the me takes over, right? Like you tend to be grouchy and so on and so forth. So, how do we best go about suppressing the me in these cases?
Yeah, first, we are not ever trying to suppress the me, right? This is something to be very clear. But because if you suppress the me, that is again another version of me that wants to suppress the me. The There is two ways, right, to this or any such question, and they are broadly uh, called as, that's why self inquiry and surrender we can say. But how that relates to this in a very practical way we can see, right? One is to be simply aware of the me rising. When the me rises and it's grouchy or it's complaining or it is just spouting some theory, if we are aware that this is just the past knowledge, the past conditioning that is coming forth, that very awareness takes the ground away from it. Normally, we are not aware of the me rising at all. We are caught in the me unconsciously. So, just like that's why the example of dream is given. When we are in a dream, we are identified with a character, and there is no awareness that I am not that character. We just completely identify with that character in the dream, and only when we wake up we recognize that I was all along identified with a false character, which is not me at all. But in the waking state, unfortunately, we do the same thing, where I am identified with a character from the past and not even aware that I am identified. So that recognition and that awareness is the pointer of satsang, is to be recognizing that the character that comes up is not me. It is a stored pattern. And when I recognize this, the next time grouchiness comes or complaint comes, there is a distance, there is a hiatus. We don't instantly jump and say, I am this or that, I'm complaining, I'm this and that, but there is a watchfulness there. That watchfulness that rises when the voice in the head comes up is the recognition of the pattern. Without that hiatus, without that gap, if we just unconsciously, instantly identify with what rises in the as the voice in the head, then we are just mechanically acting in a pattern. But when there is a gap, and that gap is watchfulness, it's awareness, it's attention, then that grip of getting caught in it goes away. So that is the pointer of self inquiry or awareness. But the other way, which is also bringing to the same ground, perhaps in a sweeter way, is the way of surrender or bhakti, which is to serve this situation and not so that there is no ground for the me. So for instance, you said someone is suffering physically. Now, what can I do in this situation to be of help to them? If that becomes my primary guiding factor, then there is no grouchiness, there is no complaint, there is no theorizing about it. We just do what we can, right? There is a total attention. If someone is suffering mentally or physically, if we give them, if we listen to them, right, without first of all in any way judging them in any sense or wanting to be somewhere else or just saying anything that is just a comfortable theory to say or whatever, but just totally value the presence of that moment and give our attention to them, then we recognize that there is no need to even give attention to the me, because there is no me in that attention to the other person. When there is total attention and love to the other person who is suffering, then that brings about the right response. We don't have to talk from memory, we don't have to talk some theory, we don't have to quote the Gita, we don't have to do anything. If Gita has to be quoted, it will come on its own. But we don't talk from just the position of some stored memory pattern. The response is alive to that moment, and it can be just a simple act of listening to them, maybe telling them something that can be of help to them, giving them words of comfort. Anything that comes from the heart can be of great value, right? Rather than just being caught in the me. So that's the other way, is having an attitude of service and love, which is surrender, seeing the divine in everyone and everything and serving them with love. That will also clear the ground of the me.
Namaste. I had maybe
Namaste.
a related question. Is this is around values, right? So maybe there are values like ahimsa or satya that are important to us. Now, what I have seen for myself is that when in the interaction, uh, say the other person is say lying or being cruel to their pet, then I somehow see a division
Hmm.
at that point. So, what are some thoughts that you have? Because in the Gita, we hear about these values, right? Like in the 13th chapter, we had discussed these values, amanitvam, adambitvam, all those kind of values. And so when things that are opposed to those values kind of arise, uh, is the attention that is being paid, is that the wrong kind of attention when there is that division?
Yeah, that's a very good question. See, when we have to explore this, right? So if someone is, for instance, doing something that's harmful, now what does it mean to be attentive to that moment, right? It doesn't mean that we. So before we even go there, see, first we have to recognize that values are not, again, stored patterns, but a direct outpouring of the recognition of the divine in everyone and everything. All of these values, like non-violence, truthfulness, lack of pride, adambitvam, all of this, right? All of this is because of recognizing the all pervading nature of divine. So if I impose values through memory, there is always conflict, because then I have told myself that I have to be non-violent, and then there is a situation where there may be a different response that's necessary, and there is conflict. So the important recognition is that unconditional love and attention is the guiding principle which can bring forth all these values organically. So now, when someone is lying or someone is being hurtful to others, then in that situation, we have to first, in our total attention, we can see that if this is causing harm to someone, then how can I be in any way of help in removing that harm? So, for instance, if a pet is being harmed, as you put it, it is wrong to see that harm being caused to the pet, and I can, if it's possible, to interfere and stop that harm from happening. Not from a sense of any kind of past value, but just as a response to the compassion that rises in that moment. Right? One can point out very sternly, clearly, that this is not correct. If one is hurting, one is cutting a tree, one can go and tell this person that, hey, you don't need to cut this tree. This tree is not to be inflicted violence. That response can come forth not from a place of division, but from a place of care and attention. Right? This is exactly the reason why, as you know very well, in Gita, Krishna asks Arjuna to fight the enemies, right? So there is the compassion and attention requires sometimes to fight, because there in that particular example, as we know, Arjuna had false compassion for the people in front of him, and he didn't want to kill them. And Krishna pointed out that you are a king, and millions of people are going to suffer if they are ruled by this evil king. And it is your duty to take care of the millions and not have compassion for a few just because they are your relatives. So engage in this righteous battle, which is the act of compassion. So that's why compassion and love doesn't have any formula. It has to be a response to the need of that moment, which can require violence at times, as it was necessary for Arjuna to do. And in our own lives, in small things, it can happen. There are situations where you may have to be harsh to someone, but being harsh may be the act of love. It is not that love or compassion means one is always gentle and indulgent. Everyone who's a parent knows this very well, right? Sometimes you have to chastise a child out of love, And the same thing is, if we look at everyone in the same way, then we don't have this division. Just because I'm chastising my child, it doesn't mean there is no love. In fact, it's love that makes one necessary to chastise. The same thing is applicable when we don't have the division. See, there is no division in an interaction with a child. We do it very naturally. So the reason there is division with others is because, again, we don't have this sense of the divine pervading everyone. So when we give our attention and love, and that attention and love necessitates a harsh response, then that is what it is. When it necessitates us to walk away, sometimes you just have to walk away because you recognize that this person is not receptive and it is only affecting the peace of our life, and then you just walk away from a situation. So it really depends on what the situation is. Sometimes we take up action that can correct it, sometimes we walk away, sometimes we just speak with some clarity that can touch their heart and change. But all of that comes from the place of no division of the me within. That is the most important thing. We can, the action outwardly can be different depending on the situation, depending on the requirements of the moment. But inwardly, there can be no division. There need be no division.
When we notice these qualities in ourselves which pop up, right, which we don't which, which we don't really like some, like you were saying, not being judgmental and all, it's sometimes it's like out of your control. There are these little judgmental thoughts which pop in your head, and so noticing them doesn't make it just go away, because after some time it pops up again. So isn't don't we have to recognize why, then work on it and go in and recognize what is it that is causing these thoughts, find the root thought, and then and and then work on them, as and that means that we're working on each of those little characteristics which he lists, or or things which to like the good qualities and the good
Yeah,
virtues, like that, with being true to yourself.
yeah,
You were
that's
mentioning being true to yourself, so
right. No, that's good. That's a good question. See, there is the see if we have a tree, right, and a tree has many branches and many leaves and shrubs and flowers and all of it. If you look at each branch separately and we try to see why this branch is here, why that branch is there, then that is one way, right? And that process of working on each branch takes a long time and it's never ending, because one branch goes, the next branch is growing the other side, that branch goes, this branch goes the other side. But if we recognize that all these branches are coming from the same root and we cut the root, then the whole tree is removed, as it were. Right? So the what is the root of all of this? In this case, the judgments, the anxieties, the pride, all of this is because of the division of the me and therefore the other. We think I am separate, others are separate, and this separation is what is causing all of this to come about. Judgments, everything we talked about. So, the direct way of self inquiry is therefore to not work on each of this separately, but to recognize any time it rises, go to the root I thought, which is causing all this to happen. It is because I am caught in the false I that the judgments are there, the images are there, the projections are there, all of this is there. But when I instead recognize that there is only the divine, and it is the divine that's expressing itself in all these ways, then it cuts all of that in one shot. So each moment, that's why we were saying that if I have the attitude of love and attention and service to the other, then it removes the sense of the other itself. Because then what is here is only that which is in front of us. That which is coming up as either an object or a person or whatever it might be, when he or she or that is given full attention, then can there be judgment in that attention? When I just look at this person fully, I want to understand them. I want to know where they are coming from. I want to just give them my full. There is nothing held separately. Just looking at them fully, looking at the whole movement. Then there is no division in that looking. There is no when there is this seeing without the seer, then the very seeing is an act of love, right? And so the reason judgments are rising, all these things are rising, is because we are seeing from the standpoint of the seer. The me, which is the seer, is dividing itself from what is being seen. But when there is total attention to the seeing itself, then that very attention removes the seer. Right? So it's not something that we can speculate upon, but we can do it. Right? Actually, when you listen to anyone, right, then that's why there is no such thing as wrong question. There is no such thing as, everything is perfect as it is. Right? We just listen to the person, whatever they are saying, and there is a response out of that listening. There is no judgment, there is nothing, but that requires us to be very attentive and loving. And that love and attention is an expression of the divine. So it is not that we can um, tell ourselves even that they are divine, but it's just by giving that full attention and love, the divinity reveals itself. Right? We see the unique way in which every person is, every event is, every object is. And to see the uniqueness of each person, to see the particular way in which things come about, all of this is all of this is an act of attention. And that attention brings about, or rather, it removes judgment. It removes, there is no ground for judgment, right? When you're looking at someone with curiosity, with just giving them your full attention, then can there be judgment there? There's no room for judgment there.
Can I put it another way?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you give something your complete attention, there's no space left for the you who could judge.
That's right.
It reminds me of something that Swami Sarvapriyananda says. He said, it's a bit scientific. He said, the brain is got a certain amount of bandwidth. It's 126 bits per minute or something, he said. So if you have total attention on something, use up all the bandwidth. There's nowhere for your individual to rise.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Full when your entire brain is in total attention, then there is no room for the me to rise. See, this happens it's not something very mystical, right? So it happens when you are engaged in something fully. Many times when you are engaged in something so completely, there is no room for the me. The problem is we are not engaged fully every moment. Sometimes we get into that mode of engaging fully, and then we are caught in division some other times. The whole pointer of attention is to remain fully engaged each moment. And when there is inattention, to be aware of it so that it dissolves. But if you are engaged fully, there is no room for inattention.
I have one question. This has to be developed through practice, right? Because initially, when we are trying to be in the movement and listening, uh, the the inattentiveness, like you put it, and so the judgment, whatever comes, it comes. So pay attention to that, and then it's by practice because immediately because we have programmed like
Yes.
someone said the program is going on. To recognize that the programming is going on is one step, and then uh, kind of paying attention to that programming, what programming, a judgment is coming, negativity coming, whatever is coming, and then isn't that is that what it is?
Yeah, so see, we can use the word practice or we can, whatever word we use, but yes, there is certainly conditioning of a long time that makes us go in autopilot. And so there is a need to be aware of it, and in that awareness, be free of it. But the thing is, it is also only now. That's the only important thing to recognize, is that it's not something we can do tomorrow, right? Or we can say, oh, I'll do it, I'll be attentive tomorrow, but right now I'll let the program. That's never going to work because the tomorrow never comes. So in that sense, it's always now. But yes, each moment when we are attentive, the hold of the conditioning goes away. That is very true. As we remain in attention and we engage fully, then the ground for the me is taken away, and it doesn't, it can come back. That is why we call it as vasana, right? There is the uh, when there is inattention, the vasana comes up. But the more we remain alert and attentive, the less the vasanas come. So in that sense, as you say, over time you find that it's not there anymore, and it's coming less and less and all that. But we can start now. That's the most important thing, is now. And we can remain now in attention, not as a, see, that's the important thing. I hope, I don't know if this comes through, but it's not something that is a kind of a discipline of some kind. It is more an act of total love. See, love needs no discipline. Discipline is needed only when there is no love. When we see the other person or thing or everything with the eyes of the divine, see, how would a sage look at someone? There is no discipline, there is just love, right? And if we can bring that love in our heart, then see, when we even go to a temple, let's say, for instance, how would a sage look at the temple deity? Just, if you take darshan that way, it'll have a very different flavor to it, right? Instead of me seeing the divine, the me with its patterns and with its desires and prayers and want this and want that and this and that, if I just see how will Ramana look at Arunachala, just to take an example. The eye of love has no need for discipline. And when we have that eye open in our heart, then attention comes, love comes, everything comes. And we have to remain, of course, alert so that the inattention doesn't take over. But the more we are grounded in this love of the divine, there is no, the more the hold of the me is removed effortlessly.